Evelyn Harper arrived 10 minutes early, as she always did, and paused just inside the doorway of the Chicago steakhouse to take it in. The place was all dark wood and low light, polished brass and white tablecloths that probably cost more than her first car. The air smelled like seared beef and money. Laughter drifted from the private dining room in the back, loud and confident, the kind that assumed it belonged wherever it landed. She smoothed the sleeve of her navy dress and took a steady breath. This night wasn't about her. It was about Ryan. Her son stood near the bar, shoulders a little tense, tie already loosened even though dinner hadn't started. He wore the suit she'd helped him pick out, tailored, understated, good fabric without the flashy labels. He looked handsome in a quiet way, the way men who worked with their hands often did when cleaned up for a formal room. When he saw her, his face softened. "Mom," he said, stepping forward. "You made it." "I wouldn't miss this," Evelyn said, kissing his cheek. She studied him for half a second longer than necessary, the way mothers did when they were memorizing. Ryan had grease under his nails most days, a habit no amount of scrubbing fully erased. He rebuilt engines for a living, could diagnose a transmission by sound alone, and had paid for every certification himself. He was proud of his work, even if rooms like this sometimes made him feel small. Evelyn had raised him to stand straight anyway. Across the room, the bride's family occupied the best table, already halfway through their first round of drinks. Her future daughter-in-law, Claire, spotted Ryan and smiled, relief flashing across her face as she waved him over. Claire was kind. Thoughtful. Smarter than her father wanted her to be. Her father, Leonard Bishop, did not wave. Leonard Bishop rose instead, glass in hand, commanding attention without asking for it. He was silver-haired, tanned year-round, his suit perfectly cut and unmistakably expensive. Real estate money clung to him like cologne. He wore success loudly. "Well, if it isn't the groom," Leonard said, clapping Ryan on the shoulder with just enough force to remind him who was bigger. "You clean up okay, kid." Ryan smiled politely. "Thank you, sir." Evelyn watched from a few steps away, her expression calm, her posture relaxed. If anyone had bothered to look closely, they might have noticed her eyes never left Leonard for long. Dinner began with wine that Evelyn didn't recognize and cuts of meat she'd once considered extravagant before life taught her different scales of value. Conversation flowed easily around investments, development deals, and vacation homes. Leonard dominated the table effortlessly. "So Ryan," Leonard said between bites, voice carrying just enough, "you still working on cars?" "Yes, sir," Ryan replied evenly. "I manage a shop now." Leonard chuckled. "A grease monkey with a promotion. That's something." A few people laughed, unsure if they were supposed to. Claire shifted uncomfortably. "Dad." "I'm just teasing," Leonard said, waving a hand. "Nothing wrong with honest labor. I just hope you understand the lifestyle my daughter's used to." Evelyn lifted her glass and took a slow sip. Ryan nodded. "I do my best." Leonard leaned back, studying him openly. "Best doesn't always cut it, son. Chicago's expensive. Kids are expensive. And let's be honest, love doesn't pay for lake houses." The table went quiet again. Evelyn set her glass down. She had known Leonard Bishop for exactly 6 weeks. That was all it had taken for her instincts to start whispering. He smiled too easily. Spoke about money the way some men spoke about weather, constantly, casually, as if it were inevitable. Evelyn trusted instincts. They'd kept her alive through a divorce, through layoffs, through years of raising a son alone on a bookkeeper's salary. When Ryan had announced his engagement, Evelyn had been happy. Genuinely happy. Claire was good to him. But happiness didn't silence warning bells. So she'd listened. And then she'd hired someone. The private investigator's reports sat in a slim folder in her purse, neatly organized, tabs labeled, timelines cross-checked. Evelyn hadn't wanted drama. She had wanted certainty. What she'd found instead was rot. Leonard lifted his glass again later, standing slowly, savoring the moment. I suppose I should say a few words, he announced. Servers paused. Conversations died. Evelyn felt Ryan tense beside her. Leonard smiled broadly. First, I want to welcome everyone. This wedding means a great deal to our family. Claire is everything a father hopes for, smart, beautiful, refined. Claire's smile faltered slightly. And Ryan, Leonard continued, turning toward him, well. Ryan's a nice kid. Hardworking. Honest. But let's be realistic. Evelyn's fingers tightened around her napkin. He's hardly husband material for a woman like my daughter, Leonard said lightly. But sometimes love surprises us. The room froze. Ryan's face flushed, but he said nothing. He never did. That was when Evelyn stood. Her chair made a soft sound against the floor, but it cut through the silence like a blade. She reached for the microphone still in Leonard's hand. I'll take that, she said calmly. Leonard blinked, surprised. Excuse me? Evelyn smiled, polite and unyielding. I think it's my turn. She took the microphone. And the room held its breath. Evelyn didn't rush. She held the microphone lightly, as if she were about to thank the staff or make a sentimental remark about love. Leonard watched her with a half-smile, clearly assuming this was going to be an emotional mother-of-the-groom moment he could tolerate before reclaiming the spotlight. Good evening, Evelyn said. Her voice was steady, clear, practiced, not loud, not soft. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Evelyn Harper. Ryan's mother. A few nods. A few polite smiles. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, she continued. But when someone questions my son's worth in public, I find it's usually best to respond with facts. Leonard's smile thinned. Evelyn glanced down briefly, not at notes, but at memory. She'd spent weeks committing timelines to heart, understanding patterns, verifying sources. She had learned long ago that when you challenged powerful men, you did it cleanly, or not at all. Leonard Bishop built his reputation in Chicago real estate, Evelyn said. Luxury condos. Mixed-use developments. Investor partnerships promising steady, double-digit returns. Leonard shifted his weight. Now hold on. Evelyn raised one finger, not looking at him. Please. I won't interrupt your business dinner later. A murmur rippled through the room. For the last 5 years, Evelyn went on, Mr. Bishop has been moving investor funds through a series of shell LLCs registered in Delaware and the Cayman Islands. These entities were never disclosed to his partners. She reached into her purse and placed a single document on the table nearest her, sliding it forward so several guests could see the header. Bank transfer records, she said. Flagged by 2 different institutions. Leonard laughed sharply. This is absurd. Evelyn finally turned to him. Her eyes were calm. Almost gentle. It's very well documented. Claire stared at her father, confusion giving way to something colder. Additionally, Evelyn continued, approximately $12 million earmarked for redevelopment projects was diverted to personal accounts, used for offshore property, luxury vehicles, and to cover shortfalls created by earlier misappropriations. Someone at the far end of the table whispered, "Oh my God." Leonard's face had gone pale beneath the tan. You can't just stand there, Anne. I can, Evelyn said. And I am. She paused, letting silence do what it always did when properly invited. There is an active IRS audit, she added. Initiated 3 weeks ago. Your senior accountant cooperated after being informed he'd be personally liable. Claire pushed her chair back slightly. Dad, is this true? Leonard looked at his daughter, then around the room, searching for allies. He found none. This is a setup, he snapped. You think a mechanic's mother. Evelyn smiled. Bookkeeper. 34 years. I notice patterns. She turned back to the room. The audit is ongoing. Federal charges have not yet been filed, but they will be. I was advised to remain silent. She looked directly at Leonard. I chose not to. The microphone trembled slightly in Leonard's hand as Evelyn returned it to him. She didn't wait for permission. She simply walked back to her seat and sat down. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then chairs scraped. Phones buzzed. Conversations erupted in low, urgent tones. Claire stood abruptly. "Dinner's over," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "Everyone, please leave." Leonard reached for her arm. "Claire." She pulled away. "Don't touch me." Ryan sat frozen, staring at his mother. "Mom," he said quietly. "What did you do?" Evelyn placed her hand over his. "What needed doing?" The wedding was called off before dessert. News traveled fast in Chicago's upper circles. By morning, Leonard Bishop's name was already circulating in financial forums, whispered with the kind of fascination reserved for fallen giants. Within days, investors froze accounts. Partners distanced themselves. The audit widened. Ryan didn't speak much the first week. He showed up at Evelyn's apartment late one night, eyes rimmed red, exhaustion etched deep into his face. "I keep replaying it," he said, staring at the floor. "That moment. I didn't even know how to feel." Evelyn handed him a mug of coffee. "You don't have to decide that yet." "Did you really hire a PI?" he asked. She nodded. "I wanted to be wrong." Claire called 3 days later. She cried. She apologized. She admitted she'd ignored signs for years, missing money, unexplained rage, the way her father belittled anyone who didn't serve his image. "I didn't want to believe it," Claire said. "But you saved me." Evelyn listened. She didn't say, "I told you so." She never did. Months passed. Federal charges came swiftly once the evidence surfaced. Embezzlement. Tax fraud. Wire fraud. Leonard Bishop's empire unraveled piece by piece, devoured by the same systems he'd once manipulated with ease. Ryan stayed busy. Work grounded him. Grease under his nails reminded him who he was. One afternoon, he stopped by Evelyn's place with a folded invitation in his pocket. "We're still getting married," he said. "But, smaller. No steakhouse. No speeches." Evelyn smiled. "Good." The ceremony took place in a friend's backyard. String lights. Folding chairs. A borrowed sound system that crackled slightly when the music started. Claire wore a simple dress. Ryan wore the same suit. When Evelyn watched them exchange vows, she felt something settle inside her, a quiet certainty that love, when stripped of spectacle, endured. Afterward, Claire hugged her. Hard. "Thank you," she whispered. "For protecting us." Evelyn looked out at the guests, real friends, honest laughter, no one pretending. She thought of Leonard Bishop, now a cautionary tale. And she thought of her son, standing tall, finally seen. This was enough. The federal case moved faster than anyone expected. Once the indictment dropped, it landed like a thunderclap across Chicago's real estate world. Leonard Bishop was arrested at his downtown office in front of employees who had once competed for his approval. Cameras caught him shielding his face as U.S. Marshals escorted him through the lobby he'd paid millions to renovate. The footage aired on every local station. Ryan watched it once. Then he turned the TV off. Claire testified 2 months later. It broke something in her and healed something else at the same time. She told the truth without drama, naming dates, amounts, conversations she wished she'd confronted sooner. When she walked out of the courthouse, she didn't look back. The wedding registry was cancelled. So were the country club memberships. The lake house invite list vanished quietly. What remained was real. Ryan and Claire settled into a small brick bungalow on the south side, close enough to Ryan's shop that he could bike to work when the weather was good. They painted the kitchen themselves, argued over cabinet colors, laughed when they got it wrong and fixed it anyway. Evelyn visited often, never unannounced. One afternoon, Claire handed her a framed photo from the backyard wedding. "I want you to have this," she said. "It reminds me of who stood up when it mattered." Evelyn accepted it, touched. "We all did," she replied. But they both knew the truth. Leonard Bishop took a plea deal. The sentence was long enough to end his career and short enough to haunt him with memory. His assets were seized, accounts frozen, properties sold to repay investors he'd once toasted with champagne. At sentencing, he looked smaller. Quieter. He didn't look at Evelyn. She didn't need him to. Life settled into a rhythm again. Evelyn returned to her routines, morning walks, quiet dinners, balancing her own books for the first time without someone else's chaos bleeding into them. She volunteered twice a week teaching basic financial literacy at a community center, showing young women how to read balance sheets, how to spot lies disguised as numbers. "Trust your instincts," she told them. "But always bring receipts." Ryan thrived. His shop expanded. He hired 2 apprentices and treated them fairly. Word spread. People trusted him. One night, sitting on Evelyn's couch after dinner, he finally said what he'd been holding back. "I used to think being quiet was the same as being weak," he said. "Watching you that night, I realized strength doesn't have to shout. It just has to stand up." Evelyn reached over and squeezed his hand. "You've always stood up," she said. "You just didn't know it yet." Years later, when people spoke of Leonard Bishop, it was usually as a warning. When they spoke of Ryan and Claire, it was with warmth. And when they spoke of Evelyn Harper, it was with a kind of respect that couldn't be bought. She never raised her voice. She never needed to. She had taught her son the most important lesson of all: dignity doesn't come from money, and silence is only powerful when it's chosen. That night in the steakhouse had ended a wedding. It had also saved a family.